I'd like to introduce Juan Abeyta, and he can tell you himself about the role he played helping to establish Chicana and Chicano studies at UNM.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Irene for the invitation to attend this event. I think this is a momentous occasion. It marks a real significant milestone in the history of Chicano history of New Mexico. And I cannot underestimate for you the value and the importance of having that major and having that degree here. That was something that we looked at 40 some plus years ago in terms of creating. So I guess, just put it bluntly, I feel happy. I feel proud to be here. So I actually want to address my remarks to you about being homeless. So I grew up in the 1950s and 1960s in Los Duranes. That's a barrio in the North Valley of Albuquerque. And in a lot of respects, it was an idyllic childhood. You know, going to Matanza, swimming in the Rio Grande. We had this protective ring of cultura y familia. And so it was a great childhood. But that youthful innocence has another consequence, and that it also confers a little bit of naivete. And I had that naivete. I was not aware of what was happening out in the world. And that came to a crashing halt one evening when I had one uncle that was felled by a policeman's bullet, and a second uncle who died that same evening in a jail cell here in Albuquerque. So I lost two uncles that evening. It kind of startled the family and startled me into a new awareness. Shortly thereafter, I joined an organization, I guess for lack of a better word, a civil rights organization called the Brown Berets that was here in Albuquerque. And it was a real awakening for me. It was kind of a change into another passage through my life. And I learned about the land grant struggle in northern New Mexico. I learned about voting rights groups in South Texas. I learned about the crusade for justice in Denver. So there was this whole world of Chicanismo out there that I had not been exposed to, that I learned about. And so shortly thereafter, I graduated from high school in 1967. I was eager to go on to college, the first one in my family to do so, like many raza who in that generation were the first in their families to go. So I enrolled at UNM that fall. I was really eager to continue my journey into finding out who I was as a Chicano. So I looked at the course list. I said, okay, what courses am I going to take? And I looked at the history department, and they had the usual courses on Western civilization, on Asia and Africa. But there wasn't a single course about the Southwest, about New Mexico, about anything related to the area here. Okay, so I checked the sociology department. They had a bunch of courses, sociology, religion, micro this, macro that. But there was not a single course that represented anything outside of the ivory tower here. It was blank. Same thing in the political science department. There was even nothing related to racial politics, let alone Latino politics. So that was nowhere to be found either. I even checked, and this, you can go back, I even checked the geography department. There wasn't even a course on the geology of New Mexico. So there was nothing on campus that represented anything familiar. There was nothing recognizable. And it was an omission of a whole history, an omission of a whole culture, an omission of all the contributions of a group of people were absent here. And I considered it was a brownout, and I felt homeless. So I wasn't alone. Fortunately, Gilbert Vallejos, who was with the Brown Berets, he placed me in contact with some activist Chicano students here. So I initially met with the group. Some of the names of some of the people are here tonight. I met with Luis Torres, Antonio Gomez, Ezequiel Lopez, who's seated here, Ricardo Barros, Felipe Gonzalez, who's also here somewhere, and Arturo Sandoval. And we would go on to meet at the International Center, International Student Center here on campus. It was the only place on campus where we were welcome. And it was an irony that wasn't lost on us, that here we were, US citizens, and we have to go to the International Center to meet. We were strangers in our own land, we were all homeless. So we would meet on a weekly basis. By the way, the International Student Center was just about a block away from here. We'd meet on a weekly basis, and essentially we became kind of like a study group. We were sharing articles, books, interpreting events, just still trying to find our way. I still vividly remember seeing Salt of the Earth in 16 millimeter in Antonio Gomez's living room. It was a banned movie. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's a banned movie that was portrayed the struggle of Chicano miners in southwestern New Mexico. Why wasn't that represented in the history department? So I should also mention that early on we got support from a handful of faculty, including Richard Grego from the math department, Richard's seated here today, and Louis Bransford from the College of Education. And I don't know if I'm going to stir some memories here, but Richard actually showed up at one of our first gatherings. He was pretending to jog by. He was in his sweats. And just dropped in and asked what was happening. Of course, we didn't fall for it. But it revealed that there was discontent at many levels, not just at the student level, but at the faculty level as well. And so we all knew that the time had come for change. The flagship university in the state had failed in its charter to serve all the citizens of New Mexico. So we set out to reach others, and our group grew quickly. Laverne Armijo, Diego Gallegos, Jose Estrada, Margaret and Evans Garcia, Kathy Gonzalez, Cecilia Mary Beth Martinez, Proceso Montoya, Nancy Montaño, Placido Salazar. I'm not going to name all the names, but it was about 75 students in total would become what we then became UMAS, United Mexican American Students, initially. Las Chicanas would come shortly thereafter. And we took on a variety of issues and activities, as I just mentioned, from establishing the first Chicano and Chicana student organizations, helping unionize the UNM physical plant workers, supporting the United Farm Workers boycott, coalition building with the Black and Native American campus student organizations, and pushing UNM to formally acknowledge and validate the ethnic studies centers. There are a lot of other issues and activities and events, but time today doesn't permit us to go into all the detail of those. But I do want to share one interesting side note. Felipe Gonzalez and others one summer gathered information on Chicano studies programs at other universities to kind of use as a model or a template for what we wanted to establish here. So we, in conjunction with the Black Student Union and the Kiva Club, presented a proposal to the administration to fund the establishment of 3 ethnic study centers at UNM. They came back with an offer that they could fund one program and that we should decide amongst ourselves which one. So it was the classic divide and conquer tactic that they always use. Here, we'll throw a bone and you guys can fight over it, and then you let us know what the outcome is. Well, we were prepared for that because we had dealt with them already, and we said that answer was unacceptable, that they had to fund all 3 or expect continued demonstrations. Guess what? They found the funding, and we found a home. So finally we had a place, a Chicano Studies Center, where we could actually meet. So I want to close by addressing the students that are here today. Chicano Studies was born of fire. A fire to ignite a change in the status quo. A fire to bring us out of the darkness. A fire to warm the body and feed the mind. It's now up to you to keep the flames going, to build upon the foundation, to contribute to our shared knowledge through scholarly research, to document our heritage, and to continue la lucha. Que viva la raza!
¡Que viva!
Que viva Chicano Studies!
¡Que viva!